We have intro music at Weird Growth. Yo, welcome everyone, and thank you for being here for this very special episode of Weird Growth. It's a podcast where we hear about all the strange and often unpredictable journeys that founders take on building a brand new business from scratch. This episode, we are very privileged to have Daniel Burt, the co-founder and managing director of Golden West Brewing, which just so happens to be the very place we're recording this episode from tonight. How good is Golden West? We've got beautiful cold beer at the bar, an amazing kitchen with a lovely selection of food, which we'll be able to sample later on tonight. And here in the heart of Subiaco on a cold June night, but it's a warm vibe in the room. Welcome, Daniel. Thank you very much for being on Weird Growth, mate.
Thanks, Cam. Thanks a lot.
Please introduce yourself and what is this great place that we're sitting in?
So this is Golden West Brewing Co. as it's turned out. So we actually started our journey as modular brewing. The idea was going to be to put all of our equipment into a shipping container and then move that around to cheap places to rent out. When that wasn't really feasible, we sort of merged into what we've created today, which is Golden West. But I'll go into a bit of that.
Yeah, no, we'll definitely dig in, mate. Yeah, thank you. And this probably wouldn't really fit into a shipping container as it is. So it's going to be great to dig into that story. Before we get stuck into it, though, I have a quick pop quiz for you. Not that you have time, but theoretically, if you were to start from scratch a new business today, what would it be? Like, what industry would you be in if it was something completely different?
If I was to start a new business from scratch today, probably merchandise, because you can low risk
swag,
low risk, can be sent from anywhere in the world to the customer, can be made on order, can be all done online, so you don't need to worry too much about costs.
Massive overheads, staff,
exactly,
on-demand stuff.
No liquor licenses or anything like that. Yeah.
The Golden West swag, like now, just in the community, you see it, people just walking down the street that have no connection with the beer brand that I know of, and you see it everywhere. It's really cool to see.
Yeah, that's good. So we were really lucky that the Golden West logo was already made for us. It was made about 130 years ago, and we were lucky to get that trademark. So when it came to the design of the merchandise, we kept it really simple. So basically, just the logo on the front and something like "Life is Golden" on the back.
It is timeless, yeah. We'll talk about the brand because I think that's a really cool part of the story of what you guys have created. But I'd love to hear the story about what the catalyst for starting a brewery was. Like, back when you first began, when it was modular, what was the catalyst for it?
Yeah, so one of the founders, Stu Nichols, who's no longer a director but still very much involved in the brewery, he was brewing in Kuala Lumpur. He was an expat. He actually got into brewing because he moved to Holland and hates Dutch people. So he had one other mate, and they were like, "We've got nothing in common. Do you want to start something in common?" And so they started brewing together.
And because is Dutch beer any good?
Dutch beer is really good,
right.
But they tend to borrow from like Belgium, Germany, France, everywhere around them. So you kind of get the best of all the worlds around them. And his dream was to start a brewery, but like all smart people do, you don't throw all your own money in. You gather 5 of your mates and get them to throw in money, and we bought what became
friends, fools, and family.
Yeah, exactly. So it was just fools at that stage. I still feel like a fool, So then we kicked off in just bootlegging out of a shed in Burswood, basically just brewing on a very small commercial scale.
And were you selling it at that point?
Not legally, so not strictly, no.
So your very first customers were your mates and your family, and it was basically
exactly.
So
we weren't allowed to sell it, so we didn't sell it. We were just giving it away to our mates for weddings and 30th birthdays.
That's right.
Yeah. So
I don't remember that.
You're one of the first recipients of one of our kegs, and just consuming as much as we possibly could. So at that stage, none of us had children. So we had time on weekends to kind of brew for 6 hours and then drink for 6 hours. But those days are long gone now.
And how did it progress from there? When did you realise that, hang on, this is something that people actually want and will pay for?
Yeah, the whole way through the growth journey, we kept on referring back to organic growth. So if there was something with the brand or something with the product that people didn't like and we didn't feel like it was going to be successful, we were happy to kind of call it quits there and then.
Yeah.
So moving from a bootleg brewery to a small commercial brewery was the first step, and so we set up in Newcastle Street in Leederville. Basically it was just making enough beer to make ends meet, just to see if we could build a brand and build a product line that was well liked, and we did quite well. We won some awards and brought in Ammo to help design the beer labels and everything, and got that started, and then we were really confident to make the next step. I don't think I would have made that step, gone from bootlegging to something like this with any sort of confidence, just because
I think that startup people in the room would really relate to that, like that tight feedback loop between you and your customers and the product cycle is so important, because if you're not making something that people even want, like what's the point? And that sort of real grassrootsy way of product development can be so powerful because you're building it with a community in mind. And so you've got that ready, set customer base who are just like, okay, when's your next one coming out? And I think this space, like beer and wine as well, when you've got a tribe around you and behind you, you're just that much more powerful. It's not just throwing something into the ether and hoping it sticks.
Yeah, and just to build on that, so we were operating out of a warehouse where we couldn't actually sell to customers if they turned up. So we didn't have any kind of shop fronts to get that immediate feedback. All of our feedback was coming through the bars that we were selling to.
So they really were your first paying customers, was bars. You were selling kegs wholesale essentially for taps. Yep.
Yeah, and we were getting repeat business, which was good. But it wasn't actually until COVID hit that we decided to do a milk bottle run sort of deal where people would buy a growler and then the next week would leave their growler out, we would pick it up and replace it with a full one, that we realised that, hey, we've actually got something pretty special here. So COVID was actually our most profitable time in our existence.
Yeah, and that was, so direct sales to end customers and, getting that almost like a repeat, ongoing revenue from them too.
Exactly.
Getting a measure on what the beer was that was selling the best and things.
So it was meant to be like a weekly thing. We sometimes did it twice weekly, but that was a real instigator for upping our game. We realised that we couldn't keep up with demand and that we would need a brewer, and that helped us to pay for Tim as well as a delivery driver, so that we could focus more on developing something like this.
I didn't actually know that. That's very cool. Yeah.
So without COVID, we probably wouldn't have existed.
I was one of your best customers for the milk run, but I didn't realise that was the thing, the impetus that led you to that next step. That's awesome, mate. We mentioned the Golden West brand, and it's something that people like to talk about, and people probably of a certain generation recognise, and people from our generation maybe don't. What is the background story to that?
Yeah, so like I said earlier, we were modular brewing. We were going to be in shipping containers. When we dropped that idea, we quickly needed to come up with something that was relevant. So we did a bit of a wordplay and pulled some words out that kind of described what we wanted to be, and came up with neighbourhood brewing. Neighbourhood brewing was taken by a group of people in Fremantle, which is really disappointing, but from what I hear, they're great people.
Yeah.
So then we went back to the drawing board and we're like, all right, we want it to be West Australian. We want it to speak for Western Australia, and went to the City of Vincent Library and found some information on Golden West.
Is that right?
Looked up the trademark and found that Coke had bought it in the 70s and dissolved it, and so we had this trademark that we bought for about $400 in legal fees. that contain about 130 years of brand equity. So
pretty and good, a connection to the deal. Community that you're operating out of.
Yeah, exactly. So people get in touch with us because they're doing renovations and they find old Golden West bottles underneath their house, and we've actually got some behind the bar.
Yeah, so it was aerated waters that you would get delivered to your house, coming full circle, and now a different type of aerated water, but with alcohol in it. Getting delivered to people's
Yeah. So it was aerated waters with acids was the flavouring.
Okay.
And we're actually going to bring that back. So we're going to do a seltzer and have different
awesome.
flavours that you can choose that are added behind the bar. So the seltzer will just be on tap.
And for everyone who's in the audience, if you look behind you, there's a big picture on the wall, which is of the original factory just over on Newcastle Street in Leederville.
What I love about that is the signage back in the day. They didn't want to leave anything out. So it was Golden West Company, manufacturers of high-class aerated waters and brewed drinks, etc., just in case you thought that's all they did.
All the designers in the crowd can probably relate to a client wanting to jam as much information into the given space as possible, even if it doesn't look very good. Yeah, we'll put a screenshot of the photo on the YouTube, I'm sure, for everyone to have a look at. That's cool. And I think as a kid, I remember seeing Guest, G-E-S-T, fizzy drinks in Action shops and stuff back in the day. And I guess that was a Coca-Cola owned iteration of shortening of Golden West.
So Coca-Cola actually bought Golden West just for the distribution in WA. So they dissolved it pretty quickly, turned it into Guest. And Guest is G-E-S-T, which is just the G of Golden and the est of West. I don't know why they shortened it, but then and then that became Kirk's. So a lot of the old Golden West kind of flavours that you'd see in Kirk's were actually Guest flavours and were Golden West flavours as well.
What did it feel like when you realised people actually like what you were creating, from going from your backyard with mates to shipping container? How did that feel at the time when you realised, hey, we're onto something?
I mean, the most fun I've had in this whole journey has been going to beer festivals and serving people, but also talking about the beer and the beer process. It's you get really attached to it, and when somebody doesn't like it, it does kind of go straight to your heart. But you quickly realise that tastes are different and people change tastes over time as well. The whole product thing, seeing a kind of initiative work out was probably more fulfilling. So when the growler deliveries were working,
right,
not only working but building to the point where we couldn't do it with one driver, we needed two drivers, and that was probably more exciting for me.
Yeah. Can you describe the process behind that realisation, and then what's the next step? How can we be even more ambitious? And how did you decide what to do next?
So once we realised we had a kind of a product that was going to be popular, particularly in this area, we sat down and kind of had our strategic session. We'd probably have one strategic session per year, review where we were thinking we were going, and then kind of put in place some goals that we can scratch off. So a big thing for us is
literally it used to be on a chalkboard.
So I painted a chalkboard in our old brewery, and we just listed the things we wanted to achieve that year. And there's something really cathartic about scrubbing them off, and we'd record each other scrubbing them off when we did them, it was really exciting. The decision to go into something bigger kind of morphed, and it almost wrote itself. We knew we had to have a brew pub if we were going to be successful as a brewery.
Why is that? Why do you need to be a brew pub?
For the margins. So we weren't going to get the investment to kind of be making 5 million litres per year, and to make such a significant jump can put you under serious financial stress to the point where a lot of breweries collapse. And
so when you're selling pints over a bar and food and that sort of thing, it's just that much more profitable as a business?
The margin is, instead of being around 20%, is more like 80%.
Makes sense.
You're taking on more risk, but that kind of gives you your financial basis to then grow and get more into the kind of wholesale market. But you always need this sort of base to just like keep that revenue coming in.
So you opened a brewery and a pub and raised money from investors during a pandemic. What gave you the confidence or the lunacy to take that on?
So it was friends, family, and fools. Our raise was probably 30 investors. A lot of them are close friends, so it's just my wife.
Sorry, you can answer it if you like, but I'm sure we'd all love to hear.
That's all right. Should be wondering where the remote was. I think I might have taken it down with me. I don't know. I think the market was actually pretty good at the time. COVID was largely untouched. It was during the early stages of 2021 that we did that we started the raise process. And that carried right through till kind of December 2021. It was when we opened in December when COVID hit again, and
WA
cases
specifically had lockdowns and things.
Yeah, exactly. So we kind of had this great month for the first month, and we were projecting skyrocketing, and our sales went down about 25% immediately for March, April, May. But then again, being a local brewery was a good thing because we had enough attraction that people were coming back. Speaking to other businesses around Subiaco, some of them took a 50% hit, and some of the other local ones were largely untouched.
Yeah. And so what does it take to run a hospo venue at the moment in Perth?
A very, very good operations manager. So our operations manager, Kel, she came on as a venue manager, but was quickly given about 20 hats to wear. So she was project managing the build because that ran over.
So you had to build a facility as well.
So building it from scratch. So this was just a bare warehouse to begin with.
Yep.
Getting all the kit set up, working with Western Power to get that set up, as well as hiring a completely new staff from scratch as well, at a time where it was really hard to get kitchen staff. Really lucky that we already had Tim as a head brewer, which was great. But then she was able to find Sean as venue manager. We've got some great duty managers in support, and then DJ as a chef is a really rare find.
Yeah, he's amazing.
But also we kind of gave the opportunity to him to do whatever he felt was right for the venue. So rather than telling him what venue we wanted to be, we said, what would you want to make it? And that's why he's made it.
And I guess that's an attraction for, a creative person who, really prides themselves on quality and things as well. Giving them that freedom is a real draw card.
Yeah, it was. It probably doesn't happen in hospitality too much, and it probably speaks to our lack of experience in this sort of thing, that we didn't push him just to make chicken palmies and burgers, but we knew that those options were in plentiful around here.
Yeah.
So we didn't want to just be another Subi or Fenway. We had to be something different, and what DJ's created is like southeastern spices with European and Australian favourites, and it seems to be going really well.
I love it. We're going to get to tuck into it pretty soon. There's a little story which that comes from the tech world, Jeff Bezos, about breweries, weirdly enough. And I just thought I'd share it in this episode because, we're sort of largely a tech growth kind of thing where we're sitting in a brewery. And when Jeff Bezos first announced AWS, which is actually the most profitable part of Amazon now, and it's the thing which took Amazon from just being an online bookstore to a massive global behemoth of a business, he started telling this story about German brewers in the early 1900s. And he said, the best advice that I have for people in the tech space now is to focus on what makes your beer taste better. And everyone's like, what are you talking about, Jeff? And he's like, well, in the 1900s, the German brewers, they were first introduced to electricity. And these brewers who had always relied on just like a coal fire or just a normal fire to heat up their mash, or what do you, or whatever it is, like, so there was the old school way that they'd done it since the 1500s, and all of a sudden electricity became a thing where they could heat up their vats and use machines to stir the mash or whatever it is. And so some of the brewers went out and invested in generators and building their own machinery and stuff. And, it cost heaps of money, and it did put them ahead really quickly, but that advantage only lasted a year or two. Because after then, the grid electricity started coming on and everyone had access to electricity. So all the competitors who hadn't outlaid all that massive capital for generators and machinery and stuff could all of a sudden compete and make even more beer better than these other guys down the road. And the ones that actually did better were the ones that just had better tasting beer, who would have thought. But what Bezos's point was that these companies that focused on all the back-of-house stuff, which the customers never even knew if they had a generator or if they had a electric or fire-boiled vat, it was the fact that they focused on what made their beer taste better, and they were the ones who did better. And so up until about 2006, 2007, if you were a tech company that wanted to start a new app or some software, you had to go and invest in servers and your own like IT back-of-house people to run up a whole back-end like infrastructure before you could even write a line of code, before you could put something in front of customers. And Jeff Bezos had that insight that if we were able to help people focus on what makes their beer taste better, or focus on the product that they're building for their customers, and take away all the back-of-house stuff, which the customers won't even know about, then there's going to be better products, and as a result, better beer. And the customers are going to have better value and stuff. So that was sort of like a little anecdote from the brewing industry, I guess. And you guys, are able to tap into the power grid, as difficult it was with dealing with Western Power, but now you're able to focus on what makes your beer better.
Yeah, that probably still rings true today.
Yeah.
So that you can spend, anywhere from sort of $50,000 to $5 million on kit.
Wow.
And if you go to Marrickville in Sydney, there's a walk where I think you hit about 8 craft breweries in the space of about a kilometre.
Wow.
And on that walk you get to see the full range of breweries and what they spend money on. And you can see the ones that have had a lot of investment to begin with, and they've got like double copper piping, and you look at it and you're like, that's completely unnecessary.
Makes no difference whatsoever.
But super expensive.
Yeah.
And then you see the early kind of really craft ones that have kind of yeast and water on the floor, and you're kind of standing in amongst it. But the one that stands out is Wildflower, which is you go in there and there's no equipment at all. So they've just got wooden barrels, and they get beer wort delivered. Then the yeast from the area where it's brewed just naturally creates the flavours. And so you're in what looks like a winery.
Yeah.
And it's a dirt floor, a wooden building.
Yeah.
And they seriously just focus on what they do best. And
that's I've never been there, but I have had Wildflower beer before, and if anyone ever has the opportunity to try it, it is probably the closest thing you could have to a wine, which is a beer, but it's absolutely incredible. It's just a completely different experience. Yeah.
So it's a true sour. So the sours that you would have from Perth would be kettle sours, which are artificially made, but low risk, whereas they make them high risk from yeast that are just in the air. So it can go very wrong, but as we found out with Wildflower, it can go very, very right, and they do it consistently.
What could possibly be next for the future for Golden West?
For Golden West, so the whole organic growth is about achieving a step and then moving on to the next one. I feel like if we had been looking too far into the future, we never would have gotten here.
Yeah.
And so the first step when we were back at Newcastle Street was to have a profitable month. So just to make sure that we're selling all of our stock and doing that consistently. And if we never had have gotten there, then we never would have gone to this next phase. So the next stage for us is to make this as profitable as can be. Then we'll expand our wholesale distribution.
Sure.
And we're looking at the markets that are most ripe for the taking. Right now, down south is flooded with excellent beer. It's a really hard market to break into, but we're finding that going north is quite profitable.
You're in Broome at the moment.
Yeah,
some pubs. Yeah.
Amazing. So we've had Broome, Karratha. We've got a mate in Geraldton who keeps putting the hard word on local pubs there to get our beer up there.
It's just a shame you're going to have to spend more time going north into the good weather.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough sell.
Yeah,
but we're just finding that the tastes are changing as you go further north. It's not just Swan Draft and Great Northern.
Yep.
There is markets up there, but we're also finding that Southeast Asia is quite a good market for WA beers.
Wow.
That have been set by Beer Farm and Rocky Ridge, who have set up distribution lines. So they're kind of paving the way for WA beers to make their own name up there, rather than just the eastern states taking it all.
Awesome, mate. What, with putting the sort of brewery lens over and maybe the hospo lens over things, what's a piece of advice that maybe people in the tech or startup space can learn from what you've learned over this time?
Yeah, so at each step we sought as much advice as possible. So from all sorts of people. So we didn't seek advice just from highly successful people. We spoke to a lot of people that failed to understand what led to their failure. And when you're offering free beer, people tend to come and
what a surprise!
So my advice would be to listen to as many people as possible, and then cherry pick the advice that's relevant to you. Not all advice is going to be relevant, and some people are going to give you bad advice because they just don't have the good advice in them.
Yep.
But by listening to as many people as possible, we're able to figure out what's actually going to work and what's going to fail.
Gives that broad spectrum.
Yeah. So I feel like because there's 4 directors, knowing what works is one thing, but being able to identify a bad idea quickly and stamp it out is probably just as important.
Yeah, thanks, mate. All right, well, we're getting to the end of the episode. One of the things we always do on Weird Growth is a little show and tell time. So we ask for, what's your favourite tool or device or toy that improves your life right now?
Yeah, so I'm into peak periods, so I know that I'm most functional first thing in the morning. I've got a 1-year-old who wakes me up generally between 4:30 and 6:30, but with my peak period being in the morning, I now just accept that I'm going to wake up at 4:30.
Yep.
So any time that I get before he wakes up is bonus, where I can actually get work done uninterrupted. So the tool for my productivity at the moment is a 1-year-old, which sounds so counterintuitive. But yeah, Charlie's a great sleeper, and so I'll wake up, I'll do the morning shift and get what I need to get done early in the day, and then send out requests to the directors or Kel for the rest of the day so that it's ready for the next morning.
Yeah. As a father of a 4-month-old, I would probably say the results may vary depending on whether or not a little one's going to make you more productive or not. Mate, thank you. What's your final ask, final plug? If anyone's more interested in learning more about Golden West, what should they do?
I think, the big thing for us has been organic growth and just being flexible. We took on the milk bottle run idea at the drop of a hat, and because we were all flexible, we thought, what have we got to lose? So we just gave it a shot. And then we had enough people around us to help actually deliver on that. If we were inflexible and totally, linear in our approach, then we never would have made that sidestep. And we probably never would have gotten Tim and one thing led to another.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's look for organic growth and be flexible in your site. So whilst you might have a 5-year plan, just be aware that might change quite considerably, and it's going to be determined by forces out of your control.
Yep. So if anyone wants to experience Golden West, they should obviously come down here to Subi first and foremost. Are there other bars? What are the other sort of places you can go and check out and experience the
So we've only just started using the equipment. So where our wholesale distribution isn't particularly fantastic. So we've just been delivering to our mainstay bars. So the Cot Hotel, Dilly Dally across the road. Stanford Barbers have been long-time supporters, which is really interesting. And also La La Rook in the city, stockists.
CBD.
And
I'm sure we'll see cans and fridges around the place soon.
Yeah, so the next thing is to get cans together, and Kel's really pushing for that. So
exciting. It's great, mate. Well, Dan, thank you so much for being on Weird Growth. Really appreciate you having us here. I'm not going to stand between everyone here and a beer any longer. Really appreciate the chat, mate. Thank you for having us here and being on the show.
No worries, thank you very much.
And thank you all for coming along. Really great having you here, and thank you to everyone who's listening on the podcast or watching on YouTube. If you enjoyed the episode, please do subscribe, leave us a review, all that sort of stuff. Give us a like. But until next time, I'm Cam Sinclair. This is Weird Growth. Thank you and bye-bye.